The Njoku family was a happy family of 7. Mr. and Mrs. Njoku had 5 beautiful children, 3 boys and 2 girls. They lived in a big house in the city, and because Mrs. Njoku was always busy with work, she decided to hire a house help to assist with the house chores. After searching for a while, she finally found a young girl named Ichua. Ichua was 18 years old, and she looked quiet and respectful. She had a small frame, dark skin, and eyes that never stayed in one place for too long. At first, she seemed like the perfect help. She spoke politely and worked hard, cleaning the house, washing clothes, and helping with the cooking. The children liked her, and even Mr. Njoku was pleased with how hardworking she was. But Mrs. Njoku had a strange feeling. Something about Ichua made her uneasy, though she couldn't explain why. At first, small things started happening in the house. The children complained that their drinking water tasted funny, but Mrs. Njoku thought maybe it was just the heat making the water different. Sometimes she noticed a strange smell in the kitchen, but she brushed it off. One evening, after a long day, Mrs. Njoku sat down at the dining table and took a sip from her glass of water. She paused. The water tasted different. It wasn't bad, but there was something odd about it. She turned to Ichua, who was standing by the kitchen door. "Ichua, have you noticed anything strange about the water?" she asked. Ichua shook her head quickly. "No, Ma," she said. Mrs. Njoku narrowed her eyes. "Have you been drinking from the water tank too?" Ichua hesitated for just a second before nodding. "Yes, Ma." But something in her voice made Mrs. Njoku curious. If Ichua was drinking from the same tank, why was she never seen carrying a cup? Why did she always drink in her room? That night, as she lay in bed, Mrs. Njoku couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. She had hired Ichua to help her, but instead of relief, she felt something was terribly off. Days passed, and Mrs. Njoku began watching Ichua more closely. She noticed that whenever she or the children drank water, Ichua would look away. She also realized that no one had ever seen Ichua take a sip from the water tank, not once. One afternoon, she decided to test her. She poured 2 glasses of water and called Ichua. "Ichua, come and drink with me," she said, smiling. Ichua's eyes widened for just a second before she quickly forced a smile. "Ah, no, Ma. I have my own water in my room." Mrs. Njoku frowned. "Bring it. Let me see." Ichua hesitated. Then she nodded and rushed to her small room at the back of the house. She returned with a small plastic bottle, half filled with water. "This is what I drink, Ma," she said. Mrs. Njoku took the bottle and examined it. The water was clean and clear, not from their tank. "Why don't you drink from the tank like the rest of us?" she asked. Ichua fidgeted with her fingers. I just prefer bottled water, Ma," she said, avoiding eye contact. Mrs. Njoku didn't believe her. Something was wrong, but she needed proof. That night, she decided to keep an even closer eye on Ichua. She had no idea that very soon, she would uncover something so terrible that it would shake the entire family to the core. Mrs. Njoku could not sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with thoughts. Why was Ichua refusing to drink the same water as the family? Why did she always keep a separate bottle in her room? She turned to look at her husband, Mr. Njoku, who was sleeping peacefully beside her. She wanted to wake him up, to tell him her worries, but she knew he would dismiss them. "You're just imagining things," he would say. "Ichua is just a young girl trying to do her job." But Mrs. Njoku was not imagining anything. She had seen the fear in Ichua's eyes when she asked her to drink the family's water. Something was wrong, and she was determined to find out what. The next morning, Mrs. Njoku decided to observe Ichua closely. She pretended to be busy in the kitchen, but kept her eyes on the young girl. As usual, Ichua went about her chores quietly. She swept the living room, washed the dishes, and cleaned the children's rooms. But when it was time for breakfast, she avoided the water jug on the dining table. Instead, she took out her own water bottle from her apron and drank from it. Mrs. Njoku's heart pounded. This was no coincidence. "Come and drink this water, Ichua," she said suddenly. Ichua froze. "Ah, madam, I have my own water," she said quickly. Mrs. Njoku smiled. "But this is the same water we all drink, and it's very clean. Come and take a sip." Ichua shook her head. "No, ma. I am fasting today." "Fasting?" Mrs. Njoku did not believe her. She had never seen Ichua pray, and she had never mentioned fasting before. But instead of arguing, she nodded and let her go. That night, Mrs. Njoku could not shake the feeling that something terrible was happening in her house. At midnight she heard it, the strange sound. It was faint at first, like the soft movement of feet on the tile floor. Then came a rustling noise, followed by the slow creak of a door opening. Mrs. Njoku sat up immediately. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it would wake her husband. She reached out to shake him, but he was fast asleep. She listened again. The sound was coming from the hallway. Carefully, she got out of bed and tiptoed toward the door. She placed her ear against it and held her breath. There it was again, a faint clinking sound, like someone handling a cup or a mug. She opened the door slightly and peeked into the hallway. In the dim light, she saw a shadow moving toward the kitchen. Her stomach twisted. It was Ichua. Mrs. Njoku's hands trembled as she stepped out of her room. She walked as quietly as possible, following Ichua at a safe distance. The house was silent except for the occasional chirping of crickets outside. Ichua reached the kitchen and disappeared inside. Mrs. Njoku crept closer. Through the small gap in the door, she could see Sod standing near the counter, holding a mug. But what was she doing? Mrs. Njoku's eyes widened as she watched Ichua squat slightly. Then, to her horror, she saw a thin stream of liquid falling into the mug. Urine! Ichua was urinating in the mug. Mrs. Njoku's blood ran cold. Her worst fears had come true. She put a hand over her mouth to keep herself from screaming. What was Ichua doing? And why? Then, before she could react, Ichua picked up the mug and began walking toward the backyard, toward the water tank. Mrs. Njoku felt her body freeze in shock. She had to stop her. She had to stop her now.
Mrs. Njoku's feet refused to move for a second. Her mind screamed for her to act, but her body was locked in fear. Then, all at once, adrenaline surged through her veins. She dashed out of her hiding place and ran toward the back door. "Ichua!" she shouted. Ichua froze mid-step, the mug in her hand trembling. Slowly, she turned around. Her face drained of color. "Madam, I can explain." "Explain what?" Mrs. Njoku's voice cracked with rage and disbelief. "That you've been poisoning our water. That you've been feeding my children filth while drinking clean water alone." Ichua shook her head frantically. No, I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I swear. I was just." "Put the cup down," Mrs. Njoku screamed. Startled, Ichua dropped the mug. It shattered on the tiled floor, urine spilling everywhere. By now, the noise had woken the rest of the household. Mr. Njoku appeared at the back door, rubbing his eyes, followed by the children, confused, sleepy, and scared. "What's going on?" he asked. Mrs. Njoku pointed at the broken mug. "Ask her. Ask your precious Ichua what she's been pouring into our water tank." Ichua burst into tears. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted revenge." "Revenge?" Mr. Njoku asked, stunned. Ichua fell to her knees, shaking. Your wife slapped me the first week I came here because I broke a plate. She shouted at me, insulted me, said I was a dirty thing from the village. I wanted to teach her a lesson. I didn't know the children would suffer. I only wanted her to feel helpless like I did." Mrs. Njoku gasped, her hand covering her chest. "So you were doing this because of a slap? Because I corrected you? You humiliated me." Ichua shouted, her face twisted in pain. "And no one cared." Mr. Njoku stood silent for a moment, then called the security guard. "Lock the gate. Call the police." "No, please," Ichua begged. "Don't send me to prison. I was just angry. Please, madam, I'm sorry." But Mrs. Njoku stood like stone. Her eyes, once soft and motherly, had turned cold. "You could have killed us," she said quietly. "You could have killed my children." The sirens came faster than expected. When the police arrived, Ichua confessed everything. How she had been secretly urinating into the tank every few nights, how she always avoided the water, and how she hoped Mrs. Njoku would get sick and learn what it felt like to be powerless. As they led Ichua away in handcuffs, she turned one last time. "I didn't know how else to fight back." Mrs. Njoku didn't answer. She walked back into her home, picked up every cup, plate, and utensil. She emptied the water tank. She scrubbed the house from corner to corner like a woman chasing away a curse. Mr. Njoku tried to comfort her, but she was inconsolable. The thought of what had been happening right under her nose haunted her. That night, she finally slept, not peacefully but from sheer exhaustion. And when morning came, she made a vow. No house help would ever enter her home again without proper background checks. No kindness would ever be taken for granted again. And above all, she would never ignore her instincts, because a woman's intuition had saved her family from silent death.